In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious, we would love to welcome you, dear viewers, on the accounts of the tax authority. We would love to welcome you in new virtual sessions with you and for you sessions organized by the authority. This is the fifth session in which we'll be discussing a variety of topics about the VAT applicable. Applying it in the Sultan of Oman. In this session, we specifically will discuss the real estate sector and how to apply the VAT tax on this sector as well. And we will, through this virtual session, will introduce what kind of properties taxable by the VAT and how is the supplying the tax on the real estate, and how about the tax treatment in this sector. Our guest in this session is Mr. Muhammad bin Jamil Saifi, is Director of Department for Policies and the Tax Authority. We'd love to welcome you, Mr. Muhammad, in this session. We're also on this campaign with you and for you, which is will be still continuing to be organized by the Tax Authority. We will start the presentation of yours that you will be discussing about the real estate sector. Yes, how are you? And I would love to welcome all the dear viewers. In this session, we will speak about the real estate sector and how we apply the Tax Authority in this active and vibrant sector, which is playing a role in the Sultanate's economy and also in the national economy. Hopefully in this session we will discuss a number of topics, some of which introducing what are the real estates that are taxable. Also we will get introduced to what kind of supplies in the real estate, and also what a kind of tax treatment for each part of this sector. First, we will start definitions, defining the properties. A property in general is any identified space of the plot or structure or building or engineering construction which is continuously linked with the plot. This includes attached goods which are permanently linked with the construction. So this is a general definition of properties. These are some examples of kind of properties that in which we can apply the definition. The vacant plots are one of the properties. The buildings fixed continuously on the plot, but however in terms of the provisional accommodations, furniture and non-fixed appliances to the properties, and also this includes systems not fixed permanently on buildings. These are not considered as properties and therefore they are not taxable, and even also for the appliances as well. So they must be fixed permanently, right? Yes, they need to be fixed on the plot or need to be attached to a building which is already fixed. Now the parking lots are considered as properties, hospitals are considered properties, but however for the caravans, the mobile accommodations, they are not considered as properties. Once we refer back to the definition, in general, any allocated space of the plot or any building or construction, engineering or construction which is permanently linked with the plot. This includes goods linked with the building and so on. So these are some examples for this kind of properties. For the tax treatment of such properties is different depending on the nature of these supplies. First is about leasing and also selling commercial properties. This includes hotel flats, warehouses, commercial shops, and parking lot. These are subjected to the 5% tax. And even the first selling of the residential property selling. But however, reselling the residential properties which is undeveloped plots, or for example leasing properties for residential purposes, these are exempted from the tax, the VAT. But however, for the properties which are located in the free zones and in especially economic zones, these are subjected to the 0%. So the tax treatment is different from the 5% to 0%, or for example for the full exemption. This depends on the nature of the supply. Regarding the first selling of the residential selling of the properties, why you just apply it once? For the first selling of the properties, this is related to the companies which are developing these plots or these, and therefore they would have inputs. They have been required by these developers in order to finish these residential buildings. In order not to impact the sector, which is the residential sector, we have started or we have applied the 5% VAT in order to return the input and also to impose the tax on the person who is beneficiary from this property. Also can realize for reselling the residential construction property, the second selling is it will be exempted. Only the first selling is going to be taxable. Now, some of these property different. For example, selling properties. This we will define it as transferring the ownership of a properties through the contract, sale contract. This includes disposing the properties as an owner. Also, we have some of the supplies in the real estate sector is about in-kind rights, and which means supplying goods, like for example the surfeit rights, and also regarding the service right. In addition, also we have leasing properties. It's an agreement which gives the right to occupy a certain property for a certain period of time against as a revenue, for example, leasing amount. Also, there are other supplies. They are linked with the properties. There are properties which are linked straightforward with the properties. This includes the following: the engineering works, the studies, management and supervision of the construction of a certain building. Also the demolition and also construction services, and also the trading buildings, managing them, maintaining them, repairing them, and also even the works of agents and also real estate mediators and others who are doing works that are related to the real estate. So these are the properties or supplies that are linked with the properties. In addition, there are also other examples for services which are not linked with the properties, like for example transferring employees to the construction site, for example managing real estate funds, and also for example the advertising and also campaigning services. So these services are delivered. In addition, for also the general legal consultancies, so which are linked with the, for example, leasing rights and purchase rights, and these are not considered something which is related to the properties. If we now discuss the types of supplies which are related to taxable, for example, selling, leasing, and also other supplies which are linked with the properties. Also, in addition to give, for example, in-kind rights for such properties. In addition, it's about also the place of supplying properties and other services linked to it. This is related to the place where the property is located. So wherever the property is there, so it will be the place of the supplying the services and goods of properties. For example, if it is within the Sultanate of Oman, so then the supplying of properties will be within the Sultanate of Oman, therefore it will be taxed by the VAT. In addition, we can also discuss transferring a business activity. This is not something taxable. For example, selling properties which are related part of transferring the tax. So whenever there are the conditions applicable. For example, if we, for example, if I buy a certain building, or for example a certain property, and then I have transferred this building as part of my assets to another person. So in this case, it's not considered as supply because we are just transferring the business activity or the ownership as part of my assets from a business to another business. Also, there are, as per pursuant to the law and in the bylaw, there are certain conditions they must be met and also be taken into consideration in order to be also to be out of the scope of the taxation. This is also a simple example. We have two companies, company A and company B. These companies are registered in the VAT system, and also the B company is also registered in the VAT. So they will be selling the full restaurant from company A to B. Is this kind of supply is taxable or not? The answer is no, because it is part of transferring a business activity, but also there are certain conditions need to be met in the bylaw in order to be exempted from the VAT. Now we will discuss we have a very term which is common in Oman, which is a vacant plot. The vacant plot is an area in which there is no construction, no buildings or part of these structures on the top of these plots. Is this related to commercial and residential plots? Yes. So there must be no, it is not fully constructed or not partially constructed. Within, inside the earth, it could be pipes, it could be also cables or types of constructions. Now for the tax treatment of such vacant plots, the plots of that are leased or sold, they are exempted. The only ones that are undeveloped. This now we will define what kind of developed plots. Developed plots, the ones that have constructions and buildings or part of them or part of the constructions are completed. Therefore, they will not be exempted. So these are developed plots. Otherwise, they will be undeveloped and then they will be exempted from the VAT. The plots are classified as developed or undeveloped as per the real specifications of the plot. The plot is considered developed when the construction bases are above the surface of the plot. Or for example, when they have, for example, the pipes and the plots and also the water distribution pipes and electricity, this will classify that as developed or undeveloped. So we need to understand the fact what the definition of the developed lands and how can we differentiate between a developed and undeveloped plot. Here are some examples for the developed plots, agricultural plots in which they would construct a certain applications, for example, the irrigation system, and sometimes there are roads, and sometimes there are bonds, or for example, something which is already constructed. Also developing permanent parking lots, and this will be considered as developed plots. Now we'll take this simple question. We've got two companies. So there is company A, which has built a fence around a plot. Is this a plot now considered as developed or undeveloped? This plot is not considered as developed because there is nothing on the ground, on the surface, or even inside the earth. So the fence is not considered as one aspect of the development. Now we will discuss residential properties. Residential properties includes any kind of building or part of that building designed or prepared for residential purposes and got the required approvals from the competent agency. The residential properties does not include specifically any building used as a hotel or as tourist complex or industrial complex or commercial complex or any place that provides staying or breakfast. This includes any kind of hotel flat or any constructions that are not fixed on a plot, like for example the caravans or the non-permanent accommodations. So the residential properties does not include or don't include the hotels or the hotel flats, or they don't include these caravans. These are some examples which are considered whether these residential properties or not. This includes hotel, tourist complexes, commercial complexes are not considered residential buildings, and residential villas and hotel and flats, they are considered as residential. Also caravans and the unlicensed buildings, they are not considered residential, so they don't deserve exemption. So the yes, the residential buildings, the only one they are just specified for the for residents. Now, for example, leasing office places or commercial shops, and so that is not, they are not considered as, and salons, they are not, our gym, these are, they are not considered as in nature. These are commercial, so therefore they don't are not exempted. They don't now residential properties, the first selling of the residential building is subjected to the 5% VAT. But however, reselling these residential, then properties will be exempted, and this has been explained why sometimes is for why it is being taxable for the first selling and why it is not for the others. Now, leasing properties for residential purposes. There are a number of beneficiaries from these residential properties. They want to understand what kind of properties, what kind of tax treatment they included in the bylaw. Now, leasing properties for residential purposes. Number one, we need to just define any kind of agreement which gives the right to operate a property for residential purposes when the following conditions are met. Most importantly, that the right for leasing for not less than 3 months. So the leasing contract between the landlord and the tenant is more than 3 months, because this will be considered as residential properties. The contract must be met with the commercial leasing properties from the competent agencies, and so on and so forth. So these are two key is about the conditions. The period must be more than 3 months, and this must be documented in the competent agencies. For example, if these are not recorded or not documented, they will be taxable. They will not be then considered as properties for residential purposes. We might discuss what is the privilege for these properties. We have just discussed for residential purposes. So therefore, the residential property must enjoy these two conditions in order to be considered for to be taxable. Leasing also properties, it does not include any kind of building or construction that are used for as a hotel or tourist or commercial or industrial complex, or for a place like hospitals and similar buildings. Also, leasing hotel flats includes any hotel flat which includes additional services or being paid independently, excepted in exception to the public remains maintenance. Now, the parking lots, basically leasing the parking lots is subjected to the 5%, but however it's part of supplying in order to lease in it for the building for residential purposes, they will be exempted. For example, if you go and lease a flat, one of the package of the flat is to provide you with a parking lot or 2 parking lots. So if the parking lot is part of leasing the flat, then it will be exempted. But however, if it is not part of the flat, it will be subjected for the 5%. Now, for the service fees, for example, the maintenance fees, the administrative fees, and normally these are imposed by the landlord within the contract of leasing. These fees are subjected by the 5% VAT, because these are services for additional services. and not for leasing a residential building. If they are part of one supply, then it will be treated with the same treatment of these are similar to the parking lot. If we assume that the parking lot it is part of the package, they will be applicable to the tax treatment of the tax. For example, if if the leasing contract includes a maintenance, there will be no tax for the maintenance on the other side. Yes. Yes, this regards for the parking lots and also for the administrative and also maintenance services fees. Also, when it comes to the properties owned by individuals, the law does not exempt the individuals who own residential buildings from those who practice selling and leasing contracts. If they have to register, then they have to register in the taxable properties in order to make sure they are applying and to the law. People who are practicing properties or as individuals without practicing them as for without commercial registration, basically, are they have to they need to register? Yes, they are not exempted, but also they need to take into consideration did they require the 30,000 or 38,500 riyals. Therefore, they need to be subjected to the tax. So the person he needs to take the initiative to register. Yes, the VAT, first of all, it is about self-assessment. The person needs to assess himself whether he reached the compulsory registration or not, either as individual or as someone who is commercially practicing and also who is also has the commercial. If someone who neglects these factors, there will be legal responsibilities. Yes, there will be legal responsibilities because here is the registration is compulsory. There will be penalties and also there will be to deter those who are contravening the law. Also, we discussed now finished the residential properties. Now we'll speak about commercial properties. Commercial properties is any plot or area that is not including the following. Other than these, they will be considered as commercial property. The building or part of the building is designed and prepared for residential purposes, and also it got the required approvals from the competent. And plus, it should not be undeveloped plot. So it must be designed for example, if it's designed for residential purposes, or if it is undeveloped, then it will be considered commercial. Now for the tax treatment. The supplying of the taxing agreement is taxable, which is like the 5%. Now the entitlement of the VAT. The VAT is entitled any date which comes first, either the date which putting the property to the disposal of the client, or for example the date of receiving the tax bill, or for example of receiving the payment at the end of the month. The one comes first is would be considered as the entitlement date. Also, leasing properties based on the commercial properties, and they will be collecting either periodically the amounts based on the contract as been defined in the contract itself. In such cases, they deserve to pay the tax as per the tax bill, which comes first. At least they are payable once every 12 months. You cannot say that I am collecting the leasing in every 13 months. At least once every 12 months, and it could be on half year. It could you may be collecting the leasing every 3 months. Also, deducting the tax linked with the commercial properties. It is allowed also to deduct these taxes from the poor properties, either from the expenses the property owners they are incurring. Also, there are some properties there will be kind of multi-usage of those properties. Sometimes they are used for commercial or residential purposes, and also there will be more than this plot. It has certain classifications. It will be used for a number of purposes, and this will be for a certain type of tax treatment based on the supplying. Now, these type of properties, like for example, a building consisted on this ground floor from commercial shops, and also the upper floors as residential units. The shops they will be taxable by 5%, but however, leasing the residential units, it will be exempted. Therefore, any kind of multi-usage, it will be exempted. We need to differentiate the return depending on the classification of the building. If this is a residential or the residential part, it will be exempted, but the commercial part, it will be will be subjected by the 5%. If you sold it with a certain amount of money and you didn't differentiate between residential and commercial, in this point you need to differentiate between two different parts. You need to impose the 5% on the commercial, the 5% on the commercial, and the residential will be exempted. If it is the first selling, in case selling the property for the first time, it will be not exempted. If the residential selling of the property, it will be for the first time, it will be taxable 5%. But however, this residential, it's a reselling, then it will be exempted. But for example, for the leasing, in terms of the leasing, the property is not. For the residential leasing is this will be considered supply, and then will be considered taxable. For the commercial properties in the free zone, the supplying of that troops is subjected to the basic tax in terms of the selling and also in terms of the leasing. There are certain procedures and conditions they need to be taken into consideration within the special economic zone. We've defined them before. This is about the free zones and the others, which are classified, defined by the tax authority. Now, for example, we have two companies, company registered in the VAT system, and also company B is registered in the VAT system and also licensed to work in the free zone. So the company A has leased a commercial warehouse in the free zone for the company B. Is this subjected to the taxable or not? And this will be exempted to the 0% tax, and we need to take into the consideration for the procedures and also specifications identified in the bylaw. Now we will discuss now about the commercial properties. There are a number of practices which are run in these properties, some of which within certain channels, like for example the agents. Now supplying the services by an agent who is working, it will be considered as a supply. So if the supplying these agents, they are supplying these supplies on behalf of their own major owner, so then they will be taxable regardless whether there is an agent or not. But however, the major owner must be paid, unless for the services and the products from the So this agent is not doing this kind of services for free, but there are certain fees he is taken as a result. This is linked with supplying a certain service, and this is taxable as known before. Now, just an example, let's assume that there is a company A which owns a commercial building in one of the wilayats, let's assume it's in Saham, and has contracted with a commercial and also it is working on behalf of the major owner and also on its behalf regarding in return for annual commission. The agent is working on behalf of the company A, and the company is the person who is leasing the property to the tenant. Also, there is another supply. We have the supply of the property plus the services linked by the property, which is delivered by the agent, which is also taxable by 5%, because these are considered as services linked or taxable. Now, in addition to the different types of commercial residential properties, now we will discuss the services related to the construction and also these buildings. First of all, we need to define them. The construction services, these are the services are exerted to construct buildings and also infrastructure and also other buildings like, for example, bridges, hospitals, factories. This includes the demolition, renovation, and also this sector includes a number of professions like architecture, project management, and also the, for example, the painters, decoration specialist, and others. Now the tax treatment for the construction and building services, these are taxable by 5%, these services, which is the basic. And all services of this, either for the construction and so on. And it must be supplied in the Sultanate of Oman while taking into consideration the special zones. This, we said that the place of supplying these goods to these properties is linked with the place where the property is. If the property is in the Sultanate of Oman, then it is taxable by the basic tax, which is the 5%. Also, we have the entitlement date of taxation. For the small buildings, for example, if there is a detected building, these are built in return for giving just one payment. But however, for the buildings and also for the large, there will be have certain stages and also more than one phase, and they will be continued for a long period. And the entitlement date of taxation is either the date of receiving the payment or the date of completion of the services, or, for example, the date of the taxation bill. Normally, the construction about this, there will be recurrent payments. This is related to the taxation, which take longer period of time, and there would be the taxation period for these services is one of the following dates, which comes first. The date of payment entitlement as being defined by the taxation bill, and also the date of the payment entitlement. But this should not be more than 1 month. Yes, it should not exceed 1 year. If it goes for more than 1 year, there must be, which is the date, or for example, for the date of receiving the bill, then it will be within the 12 months. There must be supplying, and there is taxation within 12 months, at least once. Now for the mechanisms in this sector, it is similar to what we said before. We said that we wish that there is awareness for the people once they evaluate their taxation themselves. This is a very simple equation. Number one, we need to just register in the VAT system. As we mentioned before, those who are obliged to register either legal or natural person, this includes the joint venture companies, the agreement, partnership of agreements outside the Sultanate. Those who are subjected to the registration, it could be the institutions and individuals whom their returns is more than 38,000, and also institutions and people who do not have a residency in the Sultanate of Oman, also supplying for goods for this within the Sultanate. These are taxable. In addition to the institutions and also people whom revenues that are exceeding for more than 38,000. If the of the returns or turnout is more than 38,500 Oman riyals, then he must oblige, and then they would be enjoying, for example, the deed count and also the return of taxation. Now, for example, of the person who is leasing commercial, leasing these commercial shops with the 50,000 Oman riyals to another company, this is taxable? Yes, he is taxable because he is supplying services that are taxable because these are commercial shops. He also he exceeded the 38,000 Oman riyals, which is the minimum requirement for the registration. And even if the person who doesn't have a commercial registration, once he has the ownership certificate, then he is obliged to pay. Yes, whether he has ownership certificate or he is doing kind of mediation or representation or agency, this person, once, because if he is practicing these services which are taxable, this person will be taxable, which is exceeding the 38,000 Oman riyals, and then he is obliged. Whether he has a commercial registration or not, then he must be registered. We always say that there is it's really easy to register in the VAT system. These are about 5 core simple steps. Number one, we need to visit the registration portal and of the tax authority. Then you need to go for the digital accreditation, and then you need to fill in the form, and then you submit the form to the system, and then you will receive a receipt from the tax authority, and then you can easily print them out. Now, this is for the people who have a registration, but also for the people who don't hold commercial registration, these are the other steps they need to go. So they need just to download the registration form, which is in the Excel. Also, they need to fill in the form, and then they need to send the application through the email of the tax authority. The registration department in the tax authority will review this application and will add it to the tax system, and then will issue the taxation certificate. Now, the collection of the tax, the person, the supplying of the properties of the VAT, he needs to include them. In this case, we have there is a hypothesis. It's not a must. Once you register, you need to collect also to pay the taxation. Also, for the companies and those who are working in the real estate sector, who also they deserve the deductions as been mentioned in the bylaw. Also, the input deduction taxation, also this is subjected it is not, no one, for example, deserves the deduction from the input tax in case for the certain conditions. There is relative or proportionate deduction for the common expenses. The taxable person, they need to to submit their declaration of taxation on time. They need to document all the accounting registrations, and these are for the steps for example, submitting the taxation accreditation. We're talking to consider the simplicity and also accessibility for complying with the taxation. We will start, you need to access the electronic system. You need to use a new declaration, and this is consisting of 5 core elements. And in case there is a taxation which is refundable, then you need to ask to refund those taxations. Once they are completed of this data, you will submit the declaration, and then you click on receiving the notification. In case if you need to ask for assistance in filling out the forms, what is the mechanism to receive such support? Is there a phone number? Is there an email or for example files someone can at least review in order to make it easier for them to access the information they are requiring to get the support needed? Yes, in terms of for the declarations and there are more than manuals. They are uploaded on the website, and also there are some explanations and also infographics on the social media, also on the website of the tax authority. In addition, there where we call also the communication center or the call center, it is working continuously. In addition, there is a possibility to communicate with the WhatsApp, which is opened for these taxable people. What we are trying, maybe it is about the penalties. The penalties is the last option we go to, and we don't wish to use it. But however, the penalties is one of the legal aspect which is available. There are from 500 to 10,000 Omani riyals as fees. Also, there will be imprisonment from 2 months to 3 years depending on the crime, and this is a penalty in case there is taxation crime or for example tax evasion. But however, before we go to the penalties, is there a communication from the tax authority with these people to just make them alert and also to encourage them to complete, for example, the fund? Yes, we do count the people who are obliged to register and they didn't register yet, or for a certain reason they didn't submit the declaration. We communicate with them. We ask them to listen to them. What is the reason why they are not abiding to the law? We sit with them. We explain to them what are the things which could be ambiguous. In addition, also we give them more space to re-evaluate these areas. The penalties is the last option we go, but also we said this is one of available tools. We have more than guiding manuals about the VAT, and the last 2 weeks we have published 4 taxation manuals for each sector, plus for the also manuals already been published before. This is a comprehensive system which is for each place. Yes, each sector, it has its own manual, and this will make it more easier for complying with the law. Yes, we have already published the manual for the real estate sector in details. and I believe it is clear, and also it has provided a lot of details specifically, so there will be no room for any kind of ambiguity for those taxable people. For any additions the taxable person would require, the tax authority has a hotline. We have also the Twitter and the social media accounts. They can easily communicate with us. Plus, the doors of the tax authority are always open. Yes, we have this is so for the inquiries. Yes, they can use the email, they can manuals, and also they can communicate with their WhatsApp, also with the hotline also as well. Thank you, Mr. Muhammad, for these clarifications for the taxation of the VAT on the properties. The door is always open for inquiries in case someone would love to ask about, for example, special cases or any other cases, either for the properties, real estate sector and other sector. Thank you, Mr. Muhammad bin Jamil Saifi, the Director of Policies and the Tax Authority. And thank you all for in this virtual session, which came one with the campaign for you, with you campaign, which is organized by the Tax Authority and Sultanate of Oman to introduce the application and implementation of the VAT. Thank you so much. I wish you a happy day, and thank you so much.